Hello and welcome to today's Iaomai Heart to Heart. I'd like to start by reading Psalm 139 verse 16 from the Passion Translation.
You saw who you created me to be before I became me, before I'd ever seen the light of day. The number of days you planned for me were already recorded in your book.
God knows our true identity. Satan's objective from the day that we are born is to undermine and warp our identity and how we see ourselves and ultimately how we see God. If we don't allow God to fully heal us, body, mind and spirit, to heal our motives, our emotions, our past hurts and disappointments, to be a people whose only motivation and desire is to serve Him, to bring glory to Him, to bring honour and praise only to Him, then how can we carry what He is starting to release into the earth in this next season? Because we cannot carry new wine in old wineskins. In Luke 10, verse 39, we read,
She had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he said.
Martha has invited Jesus into her house. And while Martha is bustling about the house, getting ready for dinner, Mary, her sister, is sitting at Jesus' feet, listening to him. Sometimes we get the impression that Mary is the spiritual one, while Martha isn't. But it's Martha's invitation to Jesus that indicates her openness to spiritual things. She longs as well to be a disciple and wants to honour Jesus by inviting him into her home. You can just imagine the scene with Jesus seated in a place of honour. Perhaps he's in the house's courtyard, surrounded by disciples, followers, and other prominent members of the community. Perhaps he's telling parables and teaching. And all the time, Mary sits at his feet, listening to him. And during all this, as Martha is bustling about, inside, she starts to fume. She has all these guests and all the cooking, all the setting out, all the cleaning and all the serving to do. In fact, she has far too much to do. And where's her sister Mary? She's outside sitting with the men rather than inside helping Martha. Eventually, Martha can't stand it any longer, and she comes to where Jesus is and seems to interrupt the conversation that he's having. She doesn't say anything to Mary, but she seems to give Jesus into trouble for not caring about her or about what she is having to do, and for not having ordered Mary to go and help her. She doesn't ask Mary to help. She commands Jesus, tell her to help me. Her anger and frustration have taken over. Martha is a bit out of line. She's rude to Jesus. But our gracious Lord, he doesn't get angry with Martha. In fact, he seems to understand and tries to soothe Martha's anger. He gently corrects Martha and defends Mary's choice to sit at his feet and listen to him teach. The one thing that Jesus seeks above all else is that the time that we give and spend listening to him, sitting at his feet. That needs to be our priority before everything else. It's at his feet that peace is found. It is the only place of spiritual rest. The most important thing in our lives needs to be our relationship with him, our ability to hear from him, to love him above all else, to listen to him before we do anything. When we go about serving, even when that service is to please God, we can end up striving and trying to define our own identity in the serving. We can find ourselves like Martha, doing it all on our own strength, exhausting ourselves, and then giving God into trouble, accusing him of not caring when it all gets too much for us. And oh, how the enemy loves that. Because in that situation, he loves to bring doubt to our minds. He loves to make us doubt God's love for us. He whispers in the places where we're overwhelmed, telling us that God doesn't care, trying to make us doubt who Christ is, who we are, and how we should live as a result. He's been doing that since the Garden of Eden. From his first recorded interaction with humans in Genesis 3, Satan is spewing his lies to Eve. He so fills Eve's mind with doubt about what God has instructed her to do that he manages to convince Eve that her identity should be found in her own strength and power. Satan convinces her that by eating the fruit of the tree of life, that she will become like God. Who we think we are determines what we do and how we live. And because of this, when Satan attacks, he starts undermining our sense of identity. Adam and Eve wanted to be like God, and they tried to get there by their own effort. They tried to get what they already had by God's grace. They were already made in God's image, already walking in communion and fellowship with him, already walking in his authority on the earth. But the lies of the enemy corrupted their identity. And what he did to them, he continues to do to us today. The antidote to Satan's lies is to sit at Jesus' feet, to stop doing, to let go of all the false things that we build around ourselves. And as we let them go, the lies behind them are exposed. The pain that fractured us and caused us to seek our identity in what we do is brought to the surface. Then we can surrender it and be healed. When we are no longer trapped in the rat race of trying to be enough or do enough, instead of forming our identity by what we achieve by ourselves, we learn to receive it from God. Beloveds, I invite you to come and sit down at Jesus' feet today. Everything else can wait. There's something very dear to his heart that he would like to share with you right now, you personally. Do you have time right now? Be blessed in Jesus' name.